Drill Sergeant Crixtel thought no recruit could survive until the human walked in, smiled, and said, "Feels like home." Crixtel had broken exactly 473 recruits in his 15-year career as a drill sergeant, and he wore that number like a badge of honor. Well, not literally wore it. That would be ridiculous, though he had considered getting it tattooed on his secondary manipulator arm. The point was, he knew how to make soft-world species cry, and by the Seven Suns he was good at it. The Vrelian stood in the center of the Galactic Military Academy's primary training facility, all 7 feet of scaled muscle and barely contained irritation. His yellow eyes swept across the morning's intake roster on his datapad, and his mandibles clicked together in what could only be described as predatory anticipation. 15 new recruits, 3 Xanthari from their low-gravity garden worlds, 5 Quilaxians who had probably never lifted anything heavier than a meditation crystal, 2 Planari, who would likely faint at the first sign of actual physical exertion, and his mandibles clicked again. 1 human. "Oh, wonderful," Crixtal muttered, his voice a gravelly rasp that made nearby recruits flinch. "A Deathworlder. Just what I needed to ruin my morning." His assistant, a nervous Planari named Whisk, glanced up from his own datapad. "Sir, the human comes with, quite impressive preliminary scores, top marks in endurance testing and, well, actually all physical category." "They all have impressive scores on paper, Whisk," Crixtal said, waving a clawed hand dismissively. "Then they get here, realize that military training is not the same as playing gravity ball with their academy friends, and suddenly those impressive scores mean absolutely nothing. Deathworlders are the worst about this. They strut in here thinking their high-gravity homeworlds make them superior. Then they discover that combat training is about discipline, not just brute strength." Whisk made a non-committal humming sound that suggested he had learned long ago not to argue with Crixtel before the morning training session. The training facility itself was a marvel of modern military engineering, which was a fancy way of saying it was specifically designed to make recruits suffer in the most efficient manner possible. The main floor stretched nearly 200 meters in every direction, divided into sections for different torture methods, training methods, obstacle courses, combat rings, endurance tracks, and Crixtal's personal favorite, the gravity manipulation zones. The gravity system was beautiful in its simplicity and absolutely brutal in its application. Embedded graviton emitters in the floor and ceiling could adjust the gravitational pull anywhere from 0.5 standard galactic gravity all the way up to 3 times standard. Most species in the Galactic Council had evolved under conditions close to 1 standard G, give or take 0.2. It made for convenient universal training conditions. It also made for a convenient way to secretly increase the difficulty without recruits realizing they were being tested. Crixtel loved that feature. Loved it the way a craftsman loves a perfectly balanced tool. He would start recruits at standard gravity, let them get comfortable, let them think they were doing well. Then, without warning, he would bump it up to 1.2, then 1.5. He would watch them struggle, watch them question their own abilities, watch them wonder why everything suddenly felt so much harder. The psychological warfare was just as important as the physical training, in his opinion. "Sir, the recruits are assembling," Whisk announced, gesturing toward the entrance where a nervous cluster of aliens were filing in, their eyes wide as they took in the intimidating expanse of the training facility. Crixtel straightened to his full height, cracked his neck, which produced a sound like breaking tree branches, and allowed himself a small smile. Time to do what he did best. The recruits lined up with varying degrees of success. The Xanthari looked like they might pass out from anxiety alone. The Quilaxians were whispering to each other, their crystalline skin chiming softly. The Planari were already sweating, and training had not even started. And then there was the human. Private Jackson Torres stood at the end of the line, and Crixtal had to admit, the human did not look particularly impressive. Average height for his species, maybe 5'10" or so. Dark hair cut short, brown skin, brown eyes that seemed almost bored as they surveyed the facility. He wore the standard issue training uniform, and unlike every other recruit in the line, he was not fidgeting, sweating, or looking remotely nervous. That was going to change very quickly. "Listen up," Crixtal's voice boomed across the facility, and several recruits actually jumped. "I am Drill Sergeant Crixtal, and for the next 8 weeks I own you. Your comfort, your dignity, your will to continue existing. All of these things belong to me now. Some of you will wash out in the first week. Most of you will not make it past week 3. And the few, the very unlucky few who survive until graduation, We'll leave here as actual soldiers instead of the soft, pathetic civilians you are right now. He began pacing in front of the line, his claws clicking against the metallic floor. I do not care what your preliminary scores say. I do not care if you were top of your class at whatever cushy academy you crawled out of. Here, you prove yourself, or you fail. It is that simple. His eyes locked onto Torres. And I especially do not care if you come from a so-called death world. High gravity does not automatically make you a soldier. It just makes you heavy. Torres, to his credit, did not react, did not bristle, did not glare, did not even blink. He just stood there with that same neutral, almost sleepy expression. Oh, Krixtol was going to enjoy breaking this one. We will begin with basic warm-ups, Krixtol announced, his tone making it clear that these warm-ups would be anything but basic. 50 standard push-ups, 50 core rotations, and a 2-kilometer run around the facility perimeter. You have 20 minutes. Begin. The recruits, scattered to their starting positions with varying levels of enthusiasm, which ranged from terrified to absolutely terrified, Krixtol casually strolled toward the control panel embedded in the wall, his back to the recruits. As they began their exercises, his clawed finger hovered over the gravity control interface for just a moment before he tapped it twice. Gravity increased to 1.5 standard G. The effect was immediate and quite frankly hilarious. Bloom! A Xanthare whose species had evolved on a world with barely 0.7 G, collapsed mid-push-up with a wheeze that sounded like a deflating balloon. His forearms, which had been supporting his elongated body fairly well, suddenly buckled under what was now more than double his homeworld's gravity.
What is happening?
Bloom gasped, his face pressed against the floor. Did someone sit on me? Keep moving, recruit, Krixtol barked, not even trying to hide his amusement. That is called physical exertion. Get used to it. Resh, a Quilaxian whose crystalline body typically moved with elegant grace, was now shuffling through push-ups like she was moving through mud. Each repetition produced a grinding sound as her joints struggled against the increased weight. Sir, I think there might be something wrong with the facility's environmental systems. The only thing wrong here is your fitness level, recruit. Krixtol shot back. Push through it. The other recruits were not faring much better. The Plenari had given up entirely and were just lying on the floor, breathing heavily. Several Quilaxians had managed maybe 10 push-ups before their arms gave out. Even the recruits from near-standard gravity worlds were struggling, their movements sluggish and strained. And then there was Torres. The human was on his 37th push-up, and he was not just completing them, he was doing them with textbook form. Down, up, steady breathing, no shaking, no straining. His expression had not changed from that neutral, slightly bored look he had been wearing since he walked in. Krixtol's mandibles clicked together in confusion. He glanced at the control panel. Yes, definitely 1.5 G. The readout was clear. So why was the human moving like he was at standard gravity or even lower? Torres finished his 50th push-up, popped up to his feet with zero difficulty, and transitioned immediately into core rotations. His movements were fluid, controlled, almost lazy in how effortless they appeared. Recruit Torres, Krixtol called out, striding over to the human. You will not showboat in my facility. This is not a performance. Torres paused mid-rotation and looked at Krixtol with genuine confusion. Sir, I was not showboating, sir. Just completing the assigned exercises. At double speed compared to your fellow recruits. Sir, I apologize if I was going too fast, sir, Torres said, and he actually sounded sincere. Should I slow down? Krixtol's eye twitched. That was not the response he had been expecting. He had been expecting arrogance, smugness, maybe a cocky smile, not a polite offer to perform worse. Just continue, Krixtol growled, waving Torres away. The human shrugged and went back to his exercises. By the time the warm-up period ended, the results were catastrophically divided. Plume had managed perhaps 15 push-ups total, and was now lying on the ground, making sounds that suggested his species might not have words for this level of suffering. Riche had completed maybe 25 push-ups, and looked like her crystalline structure might shatter from the strain. Torres had finished all 50 push-ups, all 50 core rotations, and was stretching casually while waiting for the run to begin. Sir, Whisk whispered, appearing at Krixtol's elbow. Perhaps the human has some kind of, I don't know, enhancement technology. Exoskeleton support we cannot see? Scan him, Krixtol ordered. Whisk tapped his datapad, running a quick bioscan of Torres. After a moment he looked up with wide eyes. Sir, He is completely unaugmented. No technology, no enhancements, not even standard military issue stimulants in his system. That is just him. Crixtal felt a cold sensation creep down his spine, which was interesting because Vrelians were cold-blooded and should not be able to feel such things. He looked back at the control panel, then at Torres, then back at the panel. "Run a diagnostic on the gravity system," he said quietly. "Sir?" "Run a diagnostic on the gravity system," Crixtal repeated, enunciating each word with the precision of someone who was beginning to suspect the universe was playing a joke on him. Whisk tapped away at his datapad for several long seconds while Crixtal barked orders at the other recruits to get into position for the run. Finally, Whisk looked up. "Sir, the gravity system is functioning perfectly. We are currently at exactly 1.5 standard G, with 0 deviation or fluctuation. The system is working exactly as intended." Crixtal said nothing for a long moment. He simply stared at Torres, who was now jogging in place to keep his muscles warm, looking for all the world like someone waiting for a leisurely morning exercise rather than military training under 50% increased gravity. "Perhaps," Whisk suggested hesitantly. "Perhaps Deathworlders are more capable than the training manuals suggest." "No," Crixtal said flatly. "I have trained Deathworlders before. Kranathi from high G worlds, Orzani from heavy planet colonies. They are stronger, yes, but they still feel the increase. They still strain. They do not just ignore it." On the track, Plume had finally managed to pull himself to his feet and was shuffling toward the starting line with the gait of someone who had aged 40 years in the last 10 minutes. "Sir," he called out weakly, "will the gravity situation be resolved before the run, or should we just accept death now and save time?" "The gravity is fine, recruit," Crixtal snapped. "Your conditioning is what needs resolving." Torres, overhearing this, glanced at Plume with what might have been sympathy. "Hey, you want me to pace with you? Sometimes it helps to have someone to keep rhythm with." Plume looked at Torres like the human had just offered to carry him on his back while juggling plasma grenades. You are not struggling." "Struggling with what?" Torres asked, genuinely confused. Resh, who had dragged herself over to the starting line, made a chiming sound that was probably Quillaxian for laughter but came out more like sobbing. "This human is either the toughest being I have ever met, or he has no nerve endings and cannot feel pain." "I can feel pain just fine," Torres said cheerfully. "This just does not hurt." Crixtal's mandibles were clicking so fast they were almost vibrating. This was not how training was supposed to go. This was not how any of this was supposed to go. The human was supposed to be struggling. All recruits struggled when he increased the gravity. That was the entire point. "Recruits," he bellowed, "you have 2 kilometers to run and I am feeling generous, so I will give you 25 minutes instead of 20. Anyone who does not finish in that time gets to repeat the entire warm-up sequence. Move." The recruits took off in a stumbling, wheezing pack. Well, most of them stumbled and wheezed. Torres just started running at an easy, sustainable pace, his breathing steady and controlled. Crixtal watched him go and felt something he had not experienced in 15 years of breaking recruits: doubt. The 2-kilometer run had been a disaster. If by disaster one meant a complete obliteration of everything Crixtal thought he understood about training Deathworlders, Torres had finished in 11 minutes 43 seconds, at 1.5 G, while humming what sounded like some kind of human folk song. Plume had finished dead last at 24 minutes, 59 seconds, collapsing across the finish line like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Resh had vomited twice during the run, which created these fascinating crystalline puddles that the maintenance drones were still trying to clean up. Crixtal had spent the mandatory 5-minute rest period running every diagnostic he could think of on the gravity system. He had checked the emitters, the power flow, the calibration sensors, the backup systems, even the manual override protocols. Everything came back green. Perfect functionality. The system was working exactly as designed, which meant the human was simply not affected by 50% increased gravity in any meaningful way. "This is impossible," Crixtal muttered, staring at his datapad. "This violates basic physics. He should be tired. He should be sore. He should be something other than completely fine." Whisk, who had been watching Torres stretch and chat with other recruits, tilted his head thoughtfully. "Sir, what if, and I am just theorizing here, what if this is normal for humans? What if their homeworld is significantly heavier than our standard G? Earth is classified as 1.1 standard G," Crixtal said, pulling up Torres's file. "That is heavy. Yes, but not so heavy that 1.5 should feel like nothing. The math does not work. Perhaps the classification is outdated. Galactic survey classifications do not become outdated. They are precise measurements. Even as Crixtal said it though, he felt the doubt creeping in again, cold and unwelcome. He looked at the obstacle course, a beautiful construction of walls, rope climbs, balance beams, crawling sections, and weighted carries that had made hundreds of recruits question their life choices. Then he looked at his control panel. "We are going to 2G, he announced. Whisk's eyes widened. "Sir, that is quite a jump. The Xanthorian Planari might not survive that. Literally. Then they will learn to adapt quickly," Crixtal said, but he made a mental note to keep the medical team on standby. He was harsh, not homicidal. "Recruits. Obstacle course. You will complete the full circuit. Failure to finish means you repeat it. Deliberate half-efforts mean you repeat it twice. Vomiting on the equipment means you clean it, then repeat the course. Any questions?" Plume raised one of his forearms weakly. "Yes, sir. Can we request immediate medical discharge before starting?" "No. Move." Crixtal tapped the gravity controls. 2 standard G. The effect was immediate and brutal. Every recruit except Torres suddenly looked like they had been hit by a cargo transport. Knees buckled, backs bent. Rish actually fell over sideways with a crystalline crash that probably would have been funny under different circumstances. "Oh, by the 7 suns," Plume wheezed, his body pressed flat against the ground. I cannot even stand. My bones are compressing. I can feel them compressing." One of the Planari started crying, not just tearing up, full-on sobbing. "I want to go home. I want my family. Why did I think the military was a good idea?" Crixtal was about to launch into a standard speech about mental fortitude when he noticed Torres. The human had paused, looked around at his struggling fellow recruits, and then glanced down at himself with an expression of mild curiosity. "Huh," Torres said. "Did they adjust something? Feels a bit different." "A bit different." Crixtal's mandibles were clicking again. That involuntary tick he got when reality stopped making sense. Torres actually walked with normal human stride, over to the first obstacle, a 3-meter wall that recruits had to climb. Under double gravity it might as well have been a mountain. He jumped, grabbed the top edge and pulled himself up with the casual ease of someone doing a basic exercise. Then he dropped down the other side and moved to the next obstacle. Behind him, Plume was still trying to stand up. "Recruit Plume," Torres called back. "You have got to get your center of gravity lower. Bend your knees more. Distribute the weight across all 4 arms." "I am trying," Plume gasped. "Everything is heavy. My arms are heavy. My head is heavy. My regrets are heavy." Torres jogged back, which again, jogging under double gravity like it was absolutely nothing, and helped pull Plume to his feet. "Come on. I will pace you through the first few obstacles. Just focus on breathing and moving. One step at a time." Crixtal watched this exchange with the dawning horror of someone realizing they had fundamentally miscalculated something important. The human was not just unaffected by the gravity increase, he was helping other recruits. He had enough spare energy and functionality to provide coaching. Rish had managed to get herself upright and was attempting the wall climb. She made it perhaps half a meter up before her arms gave out and she slid back down, leaving scratch marks in the composite material. "This is not possible," she chimed, her voice distorted by strain. "No one can complete this course under these conditions. This is designed to kill us. It is designed to test you," Crixtal corrected automatically, but his heart was not in it. He was too busy watching Torres guide Plume through the crawling section, maintaining a steady stream of encouragement while barely breathing hard. The next 30 minutes were a masterclass in contrasts. Most of the recruits were reduced to crawling, vomiting, or lying still and contemplating the life choices that had led them to this moment. 2 Planari had given up entirely and were just crying at the starting line. Rish had made it through 3 of the 12 obstacles before collapsing. Torres completed the entire course in 18 minutes. Then, because apparently the universe had decided to mock Crixtal personally, he went back and started helping other recruits. "Here, Plume, let me take your equipment vest," Torres said, shrugging off his own weighted vest and reaching for Plume's. "You focus on just moving your body. I will carry both." That is against regulations," Plume wheezed, but he was already fumbling with the vest straps. "Sir," Torres called over to Crixtal, "is it against regulations if I am making the course harder for myself while helping another recruit build confidence?" Crixtal opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He could not actually think of a regulation that forbade this because no one had ever been insane enough or capable enough to try it. Do what you want, recruit, he finally managed. Torres flashed a smile, put on both weighted vests, which now totaled about 40 kilograms of extra mass under double gravity, making it effectively 80 kilograms, and continued pacing Plume through the obstacles. He was not even breathing hard. Whisk appeared beside Crickstail again, his expression somewhere between awe and existential crisis. Sir, I have been running calculations. If the human is this functional under 2G, and Earth is officially listed as 1.1G, then either he is the single most conditioned human in existence, or the classification is wrong, Crickstail finished quietly. They both watched as Torres hoisted Plume over the final wall, both of them wearing weighted vests, under double gravity, while chatting about something called pizza, and whether the military cafeteria could make a decent version. I am going to find out exactly what Earth's actual gravity is, Crickstail said, his voice tight, because this is not 1.1G worth of conditioning. This is something else entirely. On the course, Torres had just finished helping Plume across the finish line. The Xanthari collapsed immediately, all four arms splayed out, making grateful gasping sounds. Good job, man, Torres said, patting Plume's shoulder encouragingly. You finished. That is what matters. I think I am dying, Plume wheezed. Nah, you are just tired. Happens to everyone. You are not tired. Torres paused, considering this. I mean, I guess I am a little tired. Like maybe as tired as I would be after a light workout back home. Crickstail heard this exchange and felt something inside him break. Not physically break, but mentally break. Some fundamental assumption about how the universe worked just shattered, like one of Race's crystalline bones probably had during that run. Whisk, he said carefully. What is the maximum safe gravity level for the training facility? 2.5 G, sir. Beyond that, we risk structural damage and serious injury to most species. Crickstail looked at Torres, who was now stretching again, completely unbothered, and made a decision that he would probably regret. Prepare for 2.5 G, he said. Tomorrow, we do full combat simulations. If this human wants to act like gravity does not exist, let us see how he performs when everything weighs more than he does. Day 2 of training began with what Crickstail had privately started calling Operation Break the Human. He had spent the previous evening researching Earth, pulling up every file, every survey report, every piece of data the Galactic Council had on the planet. The numbers kept saying 1.1 G. The numbers were clearly catastrophically wrong. The other instructors had heard about Torres. Word spread fast in the military academy, especially when that word involved a recruit who apparently treated double gravity like a mild inconvenience. Sergeant Threll, a massive Korgath who trained heavy weapons specialists, had shown up early. Lieutenant Vex, who ran the advanced tactical courses, was leaning against the wall with her arms crossed. Even Commander Oryx, the Academy's second-in-command, had wandered down to observe. I heard you found a human who does not understand physics, Threll rumbled, his voice like grinding stones. I had to see this myself. He understands physics fine, Crickstail muttered. Physics apparently does not understand him. The recruits filed in, and it was immediately obvious who had suffered through yesterday's training. Plume moved like every joint in his body had been replaced with rusty hinges. Rishra's crystalline structure had visible stress fractures. The Plenari looked like they had aged 10 years overnight. Several recruits were wearing medical support braces. Torres walked in looking like he had spent yesterday at a relaxation spa. Good morning, sir, Torres said cheerfully, snapping a crisp salute. Crickstail's eye twitched. Today we will be conducting full combat simulations. You will be equipped with 30 kilograms of tactical gear. You will navigate a hostile environment course, and you will engage training drones in live fire exercises using stun weapons. This will test every aspect of your combat readiness. He paused for effect. Any recruit who fails to complete the simulation will be dropped from the program. No exceptions. No second chances. That got the appropriate amount of terrified whimpering from most of the recruits. Torres just nodded like Crickstail had told him the cafeteria menu. Crickstail walked to the control panel, very aware that every instructor in the room was watching him. His claw hovered over the gravity controls. 2.5 G, maximum safe operational level. He tapped the command. The change was apocalyptic. Plume collapsed instantly, all four arms buckling. No, I cannot do this again. This is beyond unreasonable. This is warfare. This is training for warfare. Recruit Crickstail snapped. but even he felt the increased gravity pressing down. Verlians were from a 1.3 G world, so 2.5 made even him feel sluggish. His muscles had to work harder. His breathing became more deliberate. The planari were pinned to the floor, unable to even lift their heads. Rish was making sounds that suggested her species had very creative profanity. One Quillaxian actually cracked, small fractures appearing in his crystalline arms from the sheer pressure. Torres adjusted his stance slightly, rolled his shoulders and smiled. He smiled. "Oh, now this feels more like home," Torres said, and he sounded genuinely happy about it. Crixtal heard Threll make a choking sound behind him. Vex swore in 3 different languages. Commander Oryx just stared. "Recruit Torres." "Front and center," Crixtal ordered, his voice strained from maintaining composure. Torres jogged over. Jogged. At 2.5 times standard gravity, the human moved with more energy and spring in his step than he had shown at lower gravity levels. "Sir, yes sir," Torres said. "Put on your tactical gear," Crixtal said, gesturing to the equipment rack where 30-kilogram combat rigs waited. At current gravity, those rigs effectively weighed 75 kilograms. Torres walked over, lifted the rig with both hands, paused, and then put it on with the casual efficiency of someone putting on a jacket. He fastened the straps, adjusted the weight distribution, checked his gear pouches, and turned back to Crixtal. "Ready, sir." Behind Crixtal, Commander Oryx whispered, "What in the name of every deity in known space is that creature?" The combat simulation course was Crixtal's pride and joy. A maze of corridors, obstacles, pop-up targets, and training drones that fired stun rounds. It was designed to be challenging at standard gravity. At 2.5 G, it was supposed to be nearly impossible. Torres entered the course. What happened next would be discussed in instructor lounges for years to come. The human did not just complete the course, he dominated it. He moved through the corridors with fluid grace, his enhanced gear making him faster, not slower. When training drones popped out, he dropped them with precise stunfire before they could even target him. He vaulted over obstacles that other recruits could not even climb. He shoulder-rolled through a narrow crawl space while wearing 75 effective kilograms of gear. And he was laughing. Actually laughing like he was having fun. Contact left. Torres called out to no one in particular, spinning and dropping a drone. "This is great. This is exactly like the combat sims back at basic. Except the gravity feels right." Crixtal watched the display screen tracking Torres's progress. Perfect accuracy. Minimal time. 0 mistakes. The human was setting course records that would stand for decades. "How?" Threll said flatly. "How is this possible?" "It is not," Vex replied. "We are hallucinating. Group hallucination. It is the only explanation." Commander Oryx stepped forward, his multiple eyes focused on the screen. "Sergeant Crixtal, what is Earth's actual gravity classification?" 1.1 standard G, sir," Crixtal said, but his voice cracked on the words. "That cannot be correct." "No, sir. I do not believe it is." Torres emerged from the course 17 minutes later, breathing slightly harder than normal, but still fully functional. He had completed what should have been a 45-minute course in under 20 minutes, at maximum gravity, while setting accuracy records. He walked over to Crixtal, saluted, and said the words that would haunt the drill sergeant's nightmares. "Sir, is there any way to increase the difficulty?" That was fun, but it felt a bit too easy. "Like, I appreciate the warm-up level design, but I am ready for the actual challenge whenever you want to start that." Warm-up. Level. Design. Crixtal's mandibles stopped clicking. They just froze in place. His brain had short-circuited somewhere between too easy and actual challenge. "Torres," he said slowly, carefully, like he was defusing a bomb. "This facility cannot go higher than 2.5 G. That is maximum safe operational capacity. You just completed an expert-level combat simulation, under crushing gravity, with a perfect score, and you want it to be harder." "Oh," Torres said, looking genuinely disappointed. "Yeah, I mean, if that is the limit, that is the limit. It is just, 2.5 is still under what I am used to, so it feels light. But hey, I will work with what you have got." "Not your fault the facility is not rated for proper gravity." "Proper gravity." The words hung in the air like an accusation. Crixtal turned to look at the other instructors. They all had the same expression, the expression of people who had just discovered that everything they thought they knew was wrong. "Recruit Torres," Commander Oryx said, stepping forward. "What exactly is Earth's actual gravity?" Torres blinked. About 9.8 meters per second squared, sir." Why is that not in the files? Crixtel pulled up a conversion calculator on his datapad. He input the number. He looked at the result. He input it again. Certain he had made a mistake. 9.8 meters per second squared, translated to approximately 1.73 standard galactic G. Earth was not a 1.1 G world. Earth was a 1.73 G world. The humans had been living under almost twice what most of the galaxy considered heavy gravity, and Torres had been training his entire life in conditions that made the maximum safe capacity of this facility feel light. We have been training him under his normal conditions, Crixtel said quietly. 2.5 G is only 1.4 times what he is used to. For him, this is barely elevated. The room was very quiet. Torres looked around at the instructors, confused. Did I do something wrong, sirs? Crixtel did something he had not done in 15 years of military service. He sat down, right there on the training floor, and put his head in his hands. His mandibles clicked rhythmically, a Vrelian stress response he had trained himself out of years ago. You are not cheating, he said, more to himself than to Torres. You are just built wrong. Sir, Torres asked, concern creeping into his voice for the first time. Are you okay? Do you need medical attention? I need a career change, Crixtel muttered. Then, louder, Torres, explained to me in detail what your basic training on Earth was like. Torres glanced at the other instructors, clearly confused about why this was suddenly relevant, but he shrugged. Sure, sir. Basic training was 8 weeks at Fort Benning. We did daily runs, obstacle courses, combat drills, weapons training, standard stuff. In Earth gravity, Commander Oryx clarified. In 1.73 G. Well, yeah, Torres said. I mean, that is just normal gravity. We did not have, like, gravity modulation technology at basic training. We just trained outside, in Georgia, which has pretty standard Earth gravity, maybe a tiny bit higher because of the elevation actually. Crixtel looked up. What was your daily run distance? Started at 5 kilometers, worked up to 10 by week 6. Full gear runs were usually 8 kilometers with about 20 kilos of equipment. In 1.73 G, Crixtel repeated just to make sure he understood. Yes, sir. Threll made a calculation on his datapad and his eyes widened. That is equivalent to running 14 kilometers at standard G, while carrying 35 kilograms of effective weight. As a warm-up exercise, for basic training. I mean, it was pretty tough, Torres admitted. Lots of guys washed out. Maybe 30% did not make it through. But yeah, that was just basic. Advanced infantry training was harder. Vex echoed faintly. There is a harder version. Torres nodded enthusiastically. Oh yeah, advanced infantry was brutal. We did 20-kilometer marches with full combat loads, which is like 45 kilos of gear. Obstacle courses under simulated combat conditions. Live fire exercises in all terrains. Mountains, swamps, urban environments. My favorite was the mountain warfare course in Colorado. That was at even higher elevation, so gravity was a bit more intense. Really tested your endurance. Crixtel had a sudden vivid image of Torres as a young recruit, running through mountains under crushing gravity that would hostilize most galactic species, carrying weight that would break their bones and calling it his favorite training because it was more intense. The image made something fundamental shift in his understanding of Deathworlders. So when you arrived here, Crixtel said slowly, and we were training at standard G, which for you is about 0.58 Earth gravity, it must have felt like I was on the moon. Torres finished. Yeah, honestly, sir, I thought maybe the gravity plating was malfunctioning or something. Everything felt super light and floaty. I kept jumping higher than I meant to and accidentally throwing things too hard. It has been a bit of an adjustment, and when I increased it to 1.5 G, that felt better, closer to normal, still a bit light but more manageable. 2 G, getting close to home. Felt pretty comfortable actually. 2.5 G, Torres smiled. Now that felt like a proper workout. Still under Earth normal, but at least it was in the right neighborhood. Made me a bit homesick, honestly. Commander Oryx sat down next to Crixtel, then Threll sat down, then Vex. 4 senior military instructors, sitting on the floor of a training facility staring at a human who had just casually explained that their maximum safe gravity level made him homesick. I have been training soldiers for 23 years, Oryx said quietly. I thought I understood what Deathworld meant. I thought it meant aggressive fauna, hostile weather, dangerous microbes. I did not understand that it meant the planet itself was actively trying to crush everything on it every single moment of every single day. And they evolved intelligence in those conditions, Vex added. They developed civilization while fighting just to stand upright. Every step, every movement, every action requires almost twice the energy we use. Crixtal looked at Torres with new eyes, not with the dismissive assumption of a recruit to be broken, but with something approaching awe. Your entire species is built for combat without even trying. Your bones are denser to handle the gravity. Your muscles are strong. Your cardiovascular system is more efficient. You are biological tanks that consider our heavy gravity training to be recreational. I mean, I would not say tanks, Torres protested. We are pretty fragile compared to a lot of species. We do not have armor plating or natural weapons or anything. We just, we move around okay. You move around better than okay, Threll rumbled. You move around like gravity is a polite suggestion you can choose to ignore. Behind them, Plume had finally managed to stand up, though he looked like he deeply regretted this decision. Sir, if the human is not struggling, can we perhaps return to normal gravity so those of us who are not planetary compression survivors can continue breathing? Crixtal realized he was still running the facility at 2.5 G. He quickly adjusted it back to standard, and the collective sigh of relief from the non-human recruits was almost loud enough to echo. Torres, for his part, looked disappointed as his weight suddenly decreased. So, Torres said, what is the plan now, sir? Because if this facility tops out at 2.5 G, and that is still below Earth normal, maybe I could help with training the other recruits. I could demonstrate techniques for moving efficiently under heavy gravity, proper breathing methods, weight distribution strategies, stuff we learn as kids back home just for playing sports. Crixtal stood up slowly, brushing off his uniform. His worldview had been shattered, reconstructed and shattered again in the span of 2 days. But he was a military instructor, and adapting to new information was literally part of the job description. Yes, he said decisively. Yes, that is exactly what we are going to do. Torres, effective immediately. You are an assistant instructor for high-gravity combat conditioning. You will help train recruits on how to function when every movement feels like they are carrying their own body weight as additional cargo. Really? Torres perked up. That would be awesome, sir. I have been wanting to help. Watching everyone struggle with stuff that feels normal to me has been kind of frustrating. Additionally, Commander Oryx added, standing as well, I am going to recommend to Galactic Command that we update Earth's classification. 1.1 G is not just inaccurate, it is dangerously misleading. Any military operation that assumes humans operate under those conditions is going to severely underestimate their capabilities and overestimate their limitations, Vex added. If Torres is average for humans, and I suspect he might be, then we have been classifying an entire species of natural-born heavy infantry as moderate Deathworlders. Crixtal looked at his datapad at the file that listed Torres as just another recruit, and made a note, not to wash him out, not to break him, but to learn from him. All right, recruits, he called out, his voice regaining its usual commanding edge. Break time is over. Torres, take Plume and the other Zenthari through basic movement drills. Show them how to breathe and move efficiently when their body weight doubles. The rest of you, standard gravity conditioning until you can manage 1.2 without collapsing. As the recruits scattered to their assignments, Torres jogging over to help Plume with genuine enthusiasm, Crixtal felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Humility. He had spent 15 years breaking recruits, confident in his understanding of physical limitation and military training. It took one human, one cheerful impossibility from a crushing death world, to teach him that there were levels of capability he had never even imagined. Sergeant, Torres called over. Should I teach them the breathing technique we use for high-altitude running, or should we start with basic load-bearing posture? Start with posture, Crixtal replied. Then we will work up to breathing. And Torres.
Yes, sir?
Thank you for reminding me that the universe is full of surprises. Torres grinned. Anytime, sir. That is what we Deathworlders do best. And as Crixtal watched the human teach a Zenthari how to distribute weight across multiple limbs while discussing the proper ratio of cardio to strength training on high-gravity worlds, he made a private vow. Never, ever again would he assume that the training manual told him everything he needed to know about a species. Some lessons apparently required gravity. Lots and lots of gravity.